This message broke me, like the ocean shatters waves against the rocks.
The text came at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that started like any other boring day in my cubicle farm existence. I was debugging code for the millionth time when my phone buzzed with a message that made my blood run cold. I'm in the hospital. Mental health crisis. This is all your fault, Eli. I can't take your emotional mistreat anymore. Don't come. I never want to see you again. My wife Mara had sent this nuclear bomb of a message, and I stared at it like it might explode in my hands. Emotional mistreat? Me? I'm a software engineer who spends most evenings quietly coding while she live streams herself doing yoga to her Instagram followers. The most aggressive thing I'd done lately was ask her to load the dishwasher. But guilt hit me like a sledgehammer anyway. Maybe I had been distant. Maybe my sarcastic comments about her influencer career had finally pushed her over the edge. Maybe I was the monster she claimed I was. I grabbed my keys and wallet, then remembered the engagement ring I'd been carrying around for 3 months. Mara had been dropping hints about marriage for years, but every time I brought it up, she'd find some excuse. I'm not ready, or let's wait until my follower count hits 50,000, or my personal favorite. Marriage is just a patriarchal construct, but I still want a big wedding. The ring box felt heavy in my jacket pocket as I drove to Boston General Hospital. I'd also stopped at a flower shop, buying the most expensive roses they had. If my wife was having a breakdown, I'd be the supportive husband she needed. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and despair. I approached the front desk where a tired-looking woman in scrubs was typing something into an ancient computer. I'm looking for my wife, Mara Parker. She was admitted today for a mental health crisis. The woman frowned at her screen, typing slowly. Parker. I'm not showing anyone by that name admitted today. Maybe she's still in the emergency room. She texted me a few hours ago. More typing, more frowning. Sir, I'm showing no record of Amara Parker in our system at all today. Are you sure she came to this hospital? My stomach dropped. Can you check other hospitals in the area? 20 minutes later, after calling every hospital within a 50-mile radius, the truth was clear. Mara wasn't in any mental health facility. She wasn't having a crisis. She was lying. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot, roses wilting on the passenger seat, trying to process what this meant. Where was she? Why would she lie about something so serious? Then I remembered something my buddy Will had taught me when he was still a cop. When someone lies to you about where they are, they're usually somewhere they shouldn't be. I opened the Find My iPhone app. Mara and I had shared locations for years. She'd insisted on it for safety reasons. The little blue dot that represented my wife wasn't at any hospital. It was at the Ocean View Resort on Cape Cod, 2 hours away. My hands shook as I called Will. I need your help with something, and it's going to sound crazy. Lay it on me, Eli. What's Mara done now? I explained the hospital lie, the location tracking, everything. Will listened without interrupting, which meant he was taking this seriously. You want my advice? Don't go alone. This smells like a setup for something bigger. I was thinking of calling her parents. They deserve to know their daughter is lying about being in a mental health crisis. Good idea. Mr. Chamberlain's got money and connections. If Mara's playing games, having him as a witness might save your buttocks later. I'd always been intimidated by Mara's father. Richard Chamberlain was old Boston money, the kind of guy who owned half the city and never let you forget it. But when I called him and explained the situation, his voice went ice cold with fury. She told us she was in the hospital, too. We were planning to drive down tomorrow. If she's lying about this... He didn't finish the threat, but I could hear the anger radiating through the phone. We'll meet you at this resort. Don't confront her until we get there. The drive to Cape Cod felt like it took forever. I kept the roses on the passenger seat, a bitter reminder of how naive I'd been. The engagement ring stayed in my pocket, getting heavier with every mile. Will met me in the resort parking lot, and 10 minutes later, the Chamberlains arrived in their pristine Mercedes. Mrs. Chamberlain looked like she'd been crying. Her husband looked like he wanted to strangle someone. Room 247, I said, checking my phone one more time. That's where she is. The Ocean View Resort was the kind of place where rooms cost more per night than I made in a week. We took the elevator to the second floor in tense silence. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears as we walked down the hallway. Room 247 had a balcony overlooking the ocean. The sliding door was open, and I could hear voices. Mara's laugh. The genuine one she used when she was actually happy. not the fake one she used for her social media videos. I stepped onto the balcony and saw my wife of 5 years locked in a passionate kiss with a man I'd never seen before. He was everything I wasn't. Tall, muscled, with the kind of tan that screamed personal trainer or trust fund baby. His hands were tangled in her hair, and she was making soft sounds of pleasure that I hadn't heard from her in months. Behind me, I heard Mrs. Chamberlain gasp. Mr. Chamberlain muttered something that would have made a sailor blush. That's when Mara opened her eyes and saw us standing there. The look on Mara's face when she saw us was priceless. If you're into watching someone's entire world collapse in real time. She pushed away from her boy toy so fast he nearly fell over the balcony railing. Eli, Dad, Mom, this isn't... I can explain. Explain what? I held up the roses, letting them dangle pathetically. How you're having a mental health crisis while making out with Captain America here? The guy, who I'd mentally dubbed Trevor because he looked like every Trevor I'd ever hated, tried to slink toward the sliding door. Mr. Chamberlain blocked his path with the kind of authority that comes from owning half of Boston. You're not going anywhere, son. I want to know exactly who you are and how long you've been screwing my daughter. Trevor's tan couldn't hide how pale he went. Look, sir, I didn't know she was married when we met. Nonsense, Mara snapped. I told you about Eli on our second date. I had to admire Trevor's commitment to throwing her under the bus. She said you were separated. She said the divorce was almost final. We've never even talked about divorce, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. Inside, I felt like I was watching someone else's life implode. We had dinner together Sunday night. She helped me pick out a Netflix show. Mrs. Chamberlain was crying now, but her husband looked like he was ready to commit homicide. Mara Elizabeth Chamberlain, you will explain yourself right now. It's complicated, Daddy. Eli doesn't understand me. He's emotionally distant and controlling. I needed someone who appreciated me for who I am. So you lied about being in a mental hospital? Will had been quiet until now, but his cop voice cut through Mara's drama like a knife. You made your parents think you were having a breakdown so you could have a romantic getaway with your boyfriend? It wasn't supposed to happen like this, Mara said, tears starting to flow. I was going to tell you, Eli. I just needed time to figure out how... Time? I laughed, and it came out bitter. How much time did you need? Because according to the resort records I checked on the way up, you've been here for 3 days. This is a romantic getaway, not a mental health crisis. Trevor was edging toward the door again. This time, Will stopped him with a hand on his chest. I don't think so, Romeo. You're part of this conversation now. Look, I run a gym in Brookline. I meet a lot of people. Mara came in 6 months ago, said she was getting divorced, and we hit it off. I'm not the bad guy here. 6 months. They'd been together for 6 months while I was carrying around an engagement ring like an idiot. Mr. Chamberlain's voice could have frozen the ocean. Mara, you have 30 seconds to get your things and come with us. You're done here. I'm not going anywhere with you people. Trevor and I are in love. We're building something real together. That's when Trevor threw her under the bus for the second time in 5 minutes. Whoa, hold on. Love? Mara, we agreed this was just fun. I never said anything about love. The look on her face was almost worth the humiliation. Almost. You said I was special. You said you'd never met anyone like me. I say that to all the hot married women I hook up with. It's called being polite. Mrs. Chamberlain stopped crying long enough to look horrified. All the married women? How many others are there? Trevor realized he'd stepped in it. Look, that came out wrong. No, Mr. Chamberlain said quietly. I think it came out exactly right. Mara, you've been played by a professional, and you've humiliated our entire family in the process. I pulled out my phone and started recording. For the record, this is Eli Parker. It's Tuesday, October 15th, and I'm at the Ocean View Resort on Cape Cod, where I found my wife, Mara Parker, with her lover, Trevor, after she lied about being hospitalized for a mental health crisis. Stop recording! Mara lunged for my phone, but I held it out of reach. Why? Embarrassed? You should be. You made your parents think you were having a breakdown. You made me think I was responsible for driving you to self-harm. Do you have any idea what that felt like? You're being dramatic. I never said anything about self-harm. A mental health crisis, Mara. That's what you called it. What was I supposed to think? Trevor was trying to slip away again, but this time I blocked his path. Oh no, you're not leaving. You're part of this now. I don't want any trouble, man. This is between you and your wife. My wife, who you've been screwing for 6 months while she lied to me about working late and having girls' nights out. She told me you guys had an open marriage. Another lie. I was starting to lose count. Did she also tell you about the engagement ring I've been carrying around, waiting for the right moment to propose? The silence was deafening. Even the ocean seemed to stop making noise. You were going to propose? Mrs. Chamberlain whispered. I pulled the ring box out of my pocket and held it up. 3 months I've been carrying this thing around. 3 months of waiting for her to be ready for the next step in our relationship. Turns out she was already taking steps, just not with me. Mara was staring at the ring box like it might bite her. Eli, I can explain. No. Mr. Chamberlain's voice cut through her protests. You can't explain this, Mara. This is unforgivable. You've lied to everyone who loves you, manipulated emotions, and shown a complete lack of character. You're no daughter of mine. Daddy, you don't mean that. I absolutely mean it. You're cut off. No more credit cards, no more car payments, no more rent money. You want to be with this gym rat? You can figure out how to support yourself. Trevor held up his hands. Hey, nobody said anything about me supporting anyone. I've got my own life. And there it was. The moment Mara realized she'd blown up her marriage, destroyed her relationship with her parents, and her lover didn't want her either. The tears started flowing for real this time. This is all your fault, Eli. If you'd been a better husband, none of this would have happened. That's when something inside me snapped. Not into anger, into clarity. You know what, Mara? You're right. If I'd been a better husband, I would have seen through your lies months ago. I would have protected myself instead of trying to make you happy. I would have realized that you're not the woman I fell in love with. You're a selfish, manipulative stranger who happens to share her face. I turned to her parents. Mr. and Mrs. Chamberlain, I'm sorry you had to see this. You raised her better than this. Then I looked at Trevor. And you, stay away from me. Stay away from my house, my work, my life. We're done here. I walked back through the resort room, past the rumpled bed and scattered clothes, out into the hallway where I could breathe again. Behind me, I could hear Mara sobbing and Trevor making excuses, and Mr. Chamberlain's voice cutting through it all like a sword. In the elevator, Will put a hand on my shoulder. You okay? I'm getting there, but this isn't over. What do you mean? I smiled, and for the first time in hours, it felt genuine. I mean, Mara's about to learn that there are consequences for lying to people, and Trevor's about to find out that I'm not as harmless as I look. The elevator doors open, and we walked out into the lobby. I could see people staring. The drama on the balcony had been loud enough to attract attention. Perfect. By tomorrow, this story would be all over social media. Mara's carefully curated image as a wellness influencer was about to take a very public hit, and that was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up in my own bed for the first time in years without Mara beside me, and it felt like freedom. She'd stayed at the resort with Trevor, or maybe she'd slept in the lobby after he kicked her out. I didn't care enough to check. My phone had been buzzing all night with texts from her friends, but I ignored them all. Instead, I called in sick to work and drove to Will's apartment in Southie. You look like hell, he said, opening the door with a cup of coffee already in hand. I feel like I've been hit by a truck, but it's a good kind of pain, like after a workout. So what's the plan? Because I know you've got one. You get that look when you're solving a coding problem. I sat down at his kitchen table and pulled out a notebook. I've been thinking about this all night. Mara and Trevor humiliated me publicly. They made me look like a fool. But they also gave me ammunition. What kind of ammunition? Trevor runs a gym, right? Gyms are regulated businesses. They need licenses, insurance, health department approvals. I'm betting a guy who hooks up with married clients isn't running the cleanest operation. Will grinned. I like where this is going. And Mara's whole career depends on her image as a wellness guru and relationship expert. Kind of hard to maintain that brand when you're a cheating liar. You want to destroy them both. I want them to face consequences for their actions. There's a difference. My phone rang. Mr. Chamberlain's name appeared on the screen. Eli, I hope I'm not calling too early. I wanted to apologize again for yesterday, and I have a proposition for you. I'm listening. I'm offering you a position at Chamberlain Industries, senior software architect, significant pay increase, full benefits. I need someone I can trust. And after yesterday, I know you're a man of character. I nearly dropped the phone. Chamberlain Industries was one of the biggest tech companies in New England. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say yes. I'm also offering you the services of our legal department and our private investigator. If you're planning to divorce my daughter, you'll need both. Actually, sir, I was hoping to handle this a different way, more comprehensive. There was a pause. I see. And what would this comprehensive approach involve? Making sure Trevor and Mara understand that actions have consequences, legally, professionally, and socially. I like your style, son. Come in this afternoon. Let's discuss the details. After I hung up, Will was staring at me. Did Mara's father just offer to help you destroy his own daughter? Rich people don't like being embarrassed, and Mara embarrassed him in front of half the Cape Cod social scene yesterday. So, what's first on the revenge list? I opened my notebook. Trevor's gym. I did some research this morning. Beacon Hill Fitness has 17 negative reviews in the past 6 months, all from women complaining about inappropriate behavior from the owner. The guy's an aggressor. And you want to what, expose him? I want to give his sufferers a voice, and I want to make sure potential new sufferers know what they're walking into. We spent the next 2 hours researching Trevor Beckett and his gym. What we found was worse than I'd expected. The guy had a pattern. He targeted married women, convinced them their husbands didn't appreciate them, had affairs, then moved on to the next sufferer. Mara wasn't special. She was just the latest in a long line of conquests. This is actually disgusting, Will said, reading over a forum post from a woman whose marriage Trevor had destroyed. He's ruined at least a dozen families. Then it's time someone stopped him. That afternoon, I met with Mr. Chamberlain at his downtown office. The man looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. I keep thinking about where I went wrong with Mara, he said, pouring 2 glasses of scotch even though it was only 2 p.m. Her mother and I gave her everything. Maybe that was the problem. Some people are just selfish, sir. It's not your fault. Perhaps, but I can make sure she faces appropriate consequences. What did you have in mind? I outlined my plan. Trevor's gym would face health department inspections, IRS audits, and a social media campaign highlighting his predatory behavior. Mara would lose her influencer sponsorships when her true character became public knowledge. Nothing illegal, I emphasized, just making sure the truth comes out. Mr. Chamberlain smiled for the first time since I'd known him. Son, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. That evening, I started phase 1. I created anonymous social media accounts and began sharing Trevor's story. Not lies or exaggerations, just facts. Screenshots of his dating app profiles where he specifically targeted married women. Testimonials from his sufferers. Photos of him with different women at the same romantic restaurants. Within hours, the posts were being shared across Boston's fitness and social media communities. Trevor's gym's Facebook page was flooded with comments from angry husbands and concerned women, but I wasn't done with just social media. I called the health department and reported concerns about cleanliness at Beacon Hill Fitness. I called the IRS and mentioned suspicious cash transactions. I called the Better Business Bureau and filed complaints about unethical business practices. By Thursday morning, Trevor's gym had been visited by 3 different regulatory agencies. My phone rang at 10 a.m. Unknown number. You son of an unpleasant person! Trevor's voice was shaking with rage. I know this was you. I'm sorry. Who is this? Don't play games with me. You've been spreading lies about me online. I haven't spread any lies, Trevor. Everything I've shared is documented fact. Maybe if you didn't want people talking about your behavior, you shouldn't have behaved that way. You're trying to destroy my business. Your business destroys families. I'm just making sure people know what kind of person they're dealing with. This isn't over. You're right, it's not. He hung up and I smiled. Phase 1 was working perfectly. Now it was time for phase 2. Mara. My wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, had built her entire online presence around being a wellness and relationship expert. She gave advice about healthy communication, honest relationships, and personal growth. The irony was delicious. I started by screenshotting some of her most hypocritical posts. There was one from just 2 weeks ago about the importance of honesty in relationships. Another from last month about red flags to watch for in cheating partners. Then I created a simple video, just me, sitting in our kitchen speaking calmly to the camera. Hi, everyone. My name is Eli Parker. Some of you might know my wife, Mara Parker, from her wellness and relationship advice content. I wanted to share a story about the importance of practicing what you preach. I told the whole story. The fake hospital text, the resort, finding her with Trevor. I showed the engagement ring, the wilted roses, everything. I kept my voice calm and factual. No screaming, no name-calling, just the truth. I'm sharing this not to hurt anyone, but because I think Mara's followers deserve to know who they're taking relationship advice from. Someone who lies about mental health crises to cover up affairs probably shouldn't be giving other people guidance about healthy relationships. I posted the video to YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Then I sent the links to every influencer and blogger in Mara's network. The response was immediate and brutal. Within 6 hours, the video had been shared thousands of times. Mara's comment sections were flooded with people calling her out. 3 of her sponsors dropped her before the day was over. My phone started ringing. Mara's number. Eli, please, you have to take down that video. You're ruining my life. I'm not ruining anything, Mara. I'm just telling the truth. People are being horrible to me. They're saying terrible things. Maybe they're just disappointed. You built a career on giving relationship advice, and it turns out you're terrible at relationships. Please, I'll do anything. I'll go to counseling. I'll make it up to you. It's too late for that. You made your choice when you decided to lie about being in a mental hospital so you could screw your personal trainer. Trevor broke up with me. He said I was too much drama. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. That's not my problem anymore, Mara. Where am I supposed to go? Daddy cut me off. I lost 3 sponsorship deals, and my landlord is threatening to evict me. You're a grown woman. Figure it out. I hung up and immediately blocked her number. Phase 2 was complete. But I wasn't finished yet, not even close. Friday morning brought news that made my coffee taste even better than usual. Will called me at 7 a.m., barely containing his laughter. Turn on Channel 5 News. Your boy Trevor made the morning segment. I grabbed the remote and flipped to the local news station. There was Trevor, trying to dodge reporters outside his gym while a very serious-looking health inspector posted violation notices on his front door. Beacon Hill Fitness has been temporarily closed pending investigation into multiple health and safety violations, the reporter announced. The gym's owner, Trevor Beckett, is also facing questions about his business practices after several women came forward with complaints about inappropriate conduct. They interviewed one of his sufferers, a woman named Jennifer, whose marriage Trevor had destroyed 6 months before he met Mara. She was brave enough to go on camera, and her story was heartbreaking. He told me my husband didn't appreciate me, she said, tears in her eyes. He made me feel special, like I deserved better. Then once he got what he wanted, he disappeared. My marriage is over, my kids barely speak to me, and he just moved on to the next woman like I never existed. Perfect. The story was telling itself now. I was getting dressed for my first day at Chamberlain Industries when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I could see Mara standing on my front porch, looking like she'd slept in her car. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. You look terrible, I said, which was true. Her usually perfect hair was greasy and unwashed, her makeup was smeared, and she was wearing the same clothes from 2 days ago. Can I come in, please? I need to shower and get some clean clothes. This isn't your home anymore, Mara. Legally, it's still half mine. Actually, it's not. I pulled out a folder Mr. Chamberlain's lawyers had prepared. You abandoned the marital home to conduct an extramarital affair. According to Massachusetts law, that constitutes desertion. I'm filing for divorce on grounds of cheating and desertion. Her face went white. You can't do this. I already did. You've been served. I handed her the papers. You have 30 days to respond. Where am I supposed to live? That's not my problem. Maybe Trevor will take you in. Trevor won't even return my calls, and I can't afford rent without my sponsorship deals. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to blow up your life for a guy who screws married women for sport. She started crying, but they were angry tears, not sad ones. You're being cruel, Eli. This isn't like you. You're right. The old Eli would have let you walk all over him. The old Eli would have blamed himself for your choices, but the old Eli is gone. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk from the store. What you did was a deliberate choice to lie, cheat, and manipulate everyone who cared about you. I'll make it up to you. I'll do whatever it takes. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing. No love, no anger, no sadness. Just emptiness where she used to be. There's nothing to make up, Mara. We're done. We were done the moment you sent that text about the hospital. I closed the door and watched through the window as she stood on the porch for 10 minutes, crying and occasionally pounding on the door. Finally, she gave up and walked back to her car. My first day at Chamberlain Industries was everything I'd hoped for. The office was gorgeous, the work was challenging, and my new colleagues treated me with respect. Mr. Chamberlain introduced me around as the man who's going to revolutionize our software architecture, and for the first time in years, I felt valued. During lunch, I checked social media to see how Mara was handling her newfound notoriety. The answer was, not well. She'd posted a long, rambling statement on Instagram trying to explain her side of the story. It was full of buzzwords about personal growth and learning from mistakes, but the comments section was brutal. Her former followers weren't buying it. "How can you give relationship advice when you can't even be honest with your own husband?" one comment read. "Mental health isn't something you lie about for attention. You're disgusting," said another. Her follower count was dropping by the hundreds every hour. The wellness influencer career she'd spent years building was crumbling in real time, but the best part was yet to come. That evening, I got a call from a reporter at the Boston Globe. Someone had leaked my story to them, and they wanted to do a feature on social media influencers and authenticity. "We're particularly interested in the disconnect between public persona and private behavior," the reporter explained. "Your wife built a career on relationship advice, but her own relationship was a lie." "I'm not trying to hurt anyone," I said carefully. "I just think people deserve to know who they're taking advice from." "Would you be willing to go on record? We'd like to interview you for the Sunday edition." I thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. Absolutely. The interview ran that Sunday with the headline, "The Wellness Influencer Who Couldn't Keep Her Own Life Together." It was devastating and fair. They quoted directly from Mara's old posts about honesty and communication, then contrasted them with her actual behavior. They also included updates on Trevor's situation. His gym was still closed. He was facing multiple lawsuits from former clients, and the IRS had frozen his business accounts pending investigation. But the real bombshell came Monday morning. I was at work when Will called, laughing so hard he could barely speak. "You need to see this. Check Trevor's Instagram right now." I pulled up Trevor's account and saw a video he'd posted an hour earlier. He was sitting in what looked like a cheap motel room, unshaven and clearly drunk. "This is all Mara Parker's fault," he slurred into the camera. "That crazy, unpleasant person ruined my life. I never loved her. She was just easy, you know? Married women are always easy because they're desperate for attention." He went on for 10 minutes, calling Mara every name in the book and revealing intimate details about their relationship that made my skin crawl. But he also admitted to deliberately targeting married women, bragged about how many marriages he'd destroyed, and made several comments that were going to get him in serious legal trouble. "The best part," Will said, still laughing, "is that he tagged Mara in the video, so all her remaining followers saw it too." I checked Mara's social media accounts. She'd posted her own response video, screaming at the camera about what a psychopath Trevor was and how he'd manipulated and used her. She looked completely unhinged. The two of them were destroying each other publicly, and I didn't have to do anything except watch. By Tuesday, both videos had gone viral. Not in a good way. They were being shared as examples of what not to do on social media. Late-night talk show hosts were making jokes about them. They'd become a cautionary tale. My phone rang, another unknown number. "Eli, this is Sophie, Mara's friend. We need to talk." Sophie had been one of Mara's closest friends and biggest enablers. She'd always treated me like I wasn't good enough for her precious Mara. "I don't think we have anything to discuss, Sophie." "Please, she's not doing well. She's been staying on my couch, but I can't handle this anymore. She cries all day, she's not eating, and she keeps talking about how her life is over." "That sounds like a personal problem." "You've destroyed her, Eli. Completely destroyed her. Isn't that enough?" I thought about the question seriously. Was it enough? Had I gotten the revenge I wanted? "Sophie, let me ask you something. In all the years you've known me, have I ever been cruel to Mara? Have I ever lied to her, cheated on her, or manipulated her?" "Well, no, but have I ever made her feel bad about her career, even when she was making almost no money from it?" "No, but that's not the point. Did I support her through her mother's cancer scare last year? Did I take care of her when she had the flu? Did I listen to her complain about her problems for hours without complaining about mine?" Silence. "I was a good husband, Sophie. Maybe not perfect, but good. And she repaid that by lying about a mental health crisis so she could have a romantic weekend with a guy who sees her as just another conquest. So no, I don't think what's happening to her is too much. I think it's exactly what she deserves. I hung up and blocked Sophie's number too. That afternoon, Mr. Chamberlain called me into his office. "I've been watching the news coverage of this situation," he said. "I have to admit, I'm impressed with how you've handled everything. You've been strategic, measured, and most importantly, you've stayed within legal boundaries. I learned from the best, sir. I also wanted you to know that Mara tried to contact me yesterday. She wants money to start over somewhere new. I told her that ship had sailed." How did she take that? About as well as you'd expect. There was crying, yelling, accusations that I'm a terrible father. The usual manipulation tactics that stopped working on me yesterday. He poured 2 glasses of scotch and handed me one. "To consequences," he said, raising his glass. "To consequences," I agreed. We drank, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete satisfaction. Mara and Trevor had faced the natural results of their actions. I hadn't had to lie, cheat, or break any laws. I'd simply made sure the truth came to light. But as I was driving home that evening, I realized the story wasn't quite over yet. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think you've won, but this isn't over. You'll pay for what you've done to us." It was from Trevor, and it sounded like a threat. I forwarded the message to Will and Mr. Chamberlain, then drove home with a smile on my face. If Trevor wanted to escalate this, I was ready for round 2. Trevor's threats started small anonymous emails calling me names, fake reviews of Chamberlain Industries claiming I was unstable and dangerous. But as his legal troubles mounted and his gym remained closed, his harassment escalated. He began showing up at my office building, not approaching me directly, but making sure I saw him in the lobby or parking garage. He'd follow me to lunch, staying just far enough away to avoid restraining order territory, but close enough to make his presence known. Will, with his cop instincts, was getting worried. "This guy's unraveling, Eli. When men like Trevor lose everything, they sometimes do stupid things. Let him try. I've got security cameras, witnesses, and a paper trail of his threats." But Trevor was smarter than I'd given him credit for. He wasn't just focused on me. He was trying to rebuild his image while tearing down mine. He'd started a podcast called Truth and Consequences, where he painted himself as the sufferer of a vindictive husband smear campaign. According to Trevor's version of events, I was a controlling, abusive husband who had driven Mara to seek comfort elsewhere, then destroyed both their lives when I found out. "Eli Parker is a sociopath," he said in one episode. "He systematically destroyed my business, my reputation, and my relationship with a woman I genuinely cared about. This man is dangerous." The podcast was gaining traction, especially among men's rights activists and others who wanted to believe that women were always the real sufferers, even when they were clearly in the wrong. Mara, meanwhile, had reinvented herself as a survivor of narcissistic mistreat. She'd started her own YouTube channel where she talked about escaping a toxic marriage and healing from emotional manipulation. "Eli seemed like a nice guy at first," she said in one video, tears streaming down her face. "But behind closed doors, he was controlling, critical, and emotionally unavailable. He made me feel like I was going crazy." She'd gotten good at this new sufferer narrative. She talked about how I isolated her from friends. I'd never done that. Controlled the finances, we had separate accounts, and used silent treatment as punishment. I just stopped engaging with her drama. The worst part was that some people were buying it. Her YouTube channel was growing, and she was starting to get interview requests from podcasts about surviving narcissistic relationships. Trevor and Mara had found each other again, not romantically, but as allies in rewriting history. They were appearing on each other's shows, corroborating each other's stories, and building a narrative where they were the real sufferers. It was brilliant, actually, and it was starting to work. My new colleagues at Chamberlain Industries were beginning to ask questions. A few had found the podcast and videos, and while they didn't say anything directly, I could feel the shift in how they looked at me. Mr. Chamberlain called me into his office on a Thursday afternoon. "We need to discuss the situation with Mara and her friend," he said carefully. "They're lying, sir. You know they're lying. You were there when I found them together." "I know that, and you know that. But the court of public opinion doesn't care about facts. They care about stories, and right now, their story is more compelling than yours." He was right. My story was simple. Wife cheats. Husband exposes the truth. Consequences follow. Their story was more complex. Abusive husband drives wife to seek comfort elsewhere, then destroys her life and her lover's life out of spite. What do you suggest? Fight back, but not with more exposure or social media campaigns. Those tactics have run their course. You need something bigger. That evening, I met with Will at a bar in Cambridge to strategize. They're good, he admitted, Trevor especially. He's figured out how to play the sufferer while still seeming masculine. That's not easy to pull off. So what do? We'd let them hang themselves. They're getting confident now, taking bigger risks. Eventually, they'll slip up. What if they don't? Will grinned. Then we helped them along. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Trevor announced that he was hosting a live podcast event at a rented venue in downtown Boston. Truth and Consequences Live would feature both him and Mara telling their stories to a live audience with a Quanda session afterward. They're charging $50 a ticket, Will said, showing me the event page. And it's almost sold out. People are paying money to hear them lie about me. People love a good sufferer story, especially when the sufferers are attractive and the villain is a boring software engineer. That stung, but he was right. I was never going to win a charisma contest against Trevor and Mara. So what's the plan? We attend the event, we sit in the audience, and we wait for them to say something we can use. The venue was a small theater in the theater district, the kind of place that usually hosted experimental plays and poetry readings. As Will and I took our seats in the back row, I was amazed by the turnout. Nearly 200 people had paid to hear my ex-wife and her lover trash me publicly. Trevor took the stage first, looking better than he had in weeks. He'd gotten a haircut, bought a new suit, and seemed to have regained some of his old confidence. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he said into the microphone. "What we're going to share with you isn't easy to talk about. It's about manipulation, mistreat, and the lengths some people will go to destroy others." He launched into his story, painting me as a master manipulator who had systematically isolated and controlled Mara before orchestrating a campaign of harassment and destruction when she tried to leave. "Eli Parker didn't just want to hurt me," Trevor said. "He wanted to destroy my livelihood, my reputation, my entire life. And he succeeded. My business is gone, my savings are gone, and I've had to rebuild everything from scratch." The audience was eating it up. I could see people nodding, murmuring sympathetically, even wiping away tears. Then Mara took the stage. She looked better than she had in months. Professionally styled hair, designer dress, full makeup. She'd clearly been preparing for this performance. "Living with a narcissist is like being slowly poisoned," she began. "It happens so gradually that you don't realize what's happening until it's almost too late." She told stories I barely recognized. Events from our marriage twisted and reframed to make me sound like a monster. The time I'd asked her to contribute more to household expenses became financial mistreat. My sarcastic sense of humor became constant criticism and belittling. My introversion became emotional unavailability and manipulation. "When I finally found the courage to seek comfort elsewhere," she said, her voice breaking, "Eli's response was to systematically destroy both my life and Trevor's. He used his resources, his connections, and his technical skills to wage a campaign of harassment that left us both homeless and unemployed." The audience was completely on her side now. I could feel the hostility radiating from the crowd, and I was grateful we were sitting in the back where no one could see my face. Then came the Quanda session, and that's where they made their mistake. A woman in the front row raised her hand. "Mara, you mentioned that Eli had resources and connections. Can you be more specific about how he was able to destroy Trevor's business so quickly?" Mara and Trevor exchanged a look. They were about to go off script. "Eli's new father-in-law is Richard Chamberlain," Mara said. "He owns half of Boston. Between the two of them, they were able to pressure city inspectors, the IRS, and other agencies to target Trevor's gym." The audience gasped. This was a serious accusation. She was claiming that Mr. Chamberlain and I had used corruption and political influence to mistreat government power. Trevor nodded enthusiastically. "That's exactly what happened. They didn't just use social media and public pressure. They used political connections to weaponize government agencies against me." Another audience member asked, "Do you have proof of this corruption?" "We have documentation," Trevor said confidently. "Phone records, email trails, witness statements. We're actually considering taking legal action." They were lying, of course. There was no corruption, no political pressure, no mistreat of government power. The inspections of Trevor's gym had been triggered by legitimate complaints from his sufferers. The IRS investigation had been prompted by suspicious financial activity that Trevor himself had created, but they had just committed defamation on a massive scale in front of 200 witnesses while being recorded for their podcast. Will leaned over and whispered, "Got them." After the event, we followed the crowd out onto the street. People were talking excitedly about what they'd heard, and I caught fragments of conversation. "I can't believe how corrupt the system is. That poor woman, what she must have gone through. Someone should investigate this Chamberlain guy." Trevor and Mara were outside the venue, accepting congratulations and taking selfies with audience members. They looked triumphant, like they'd finally turned the tide in their favor. They had no idea they'd just destroyed themselves. The next morning, I walked into Mr. Chamberlain's office with a recording of the previous night's event. "They accused you of corruption," I said without preamble. "They claimed you used political influence to weaponize government agencies against Trevor." Mr. Chamberlain listened to the recording with an expression that grew colder by the minute. "Interesting," he said when it finished. "They've just accused me of federal crimes, in public, on the record. What do? We destroy them completely and permanently." He picked up his phone and called his lawyer. "David, I need you to file defamation suits against 2 individuals. Yes, I'll hold." While he was on the phone, I started researching the venue, the event, and the recording. Everything was documented, everything was public, and everything was legally actionable. Trevor and Mara had gotten so confident in their sufferer narrative that they'd forgotten a basic rule. When you accuse powerful people of serious crimes, you better have proof. They didn't have proof because the crimes never happened. But now they were about to face the consequences of their lies. The lawsuits were filed that afternoon: defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and conspiracy. Mr. Chamberlain was seeking damages in the millions, but the real blow came when their recording of their accusations went viral, not in support of them, but as an example of how sufferer narratives could be weaponized to destroy innocent people. Legal experts on social media tore apart their claims, pointing out the lack of evidence and the serious nature of accusing someone of corruption without proof. Trevor's podcast was removed from most platforms for making unsubstantiated accusations of criminal activity. Mara's YouTube channel was demonetized and flagged for spreading misinformation. Within a week, their brief comeback was over. But they weren't done fighting. On Friday evening, as I was leaving work, Trevor was waiting for me in the parking garage. "You son of an unpleasant person," he said, stepping out from behind a concrete pillar. "You've destroyed everything. You destroyed yourself, Trevor. I just made sure people knew the truth." "The truth? The truth is that you're a vindictive psychopath who can't handle the fact that his wife preferred a real man." I kept walking toward my car, but he followed me. "You think you've won? You think this is over?" I turned to face him. "It is over, Trevor. You lost. Accept it and move on." "I'm not going anywhere, and neither is Mara. We're going to keep fighting until everyone knows what kind of monster you really are." That's when I realized he wasn't just angry. He was desperate. The lawsuits had frozen what little money he had left. His reputation was destroyed beyond repair. He had nothing left to lose. "Trevor, you need to walk away, right now. Before you do something you'll regret." "Like what? What are you going to do? Call your rich daddy-in-law to have me arrested?" "I'm going to call the police and report that you're threatening me in a parking garage. You're already facing multiple lawsuits. Do you really want to add criminal charges to your problems?" For a moment, I thought he was going to back down. Then his face twisted with rage and he lunged at me. I sidestepped his clumsy attack and he crashed into the side of my car. Before he could recover, I had my phone out and was calling 911. "This is Eli Parker. I'm in the Chamberlain Industries parking garage and I'm being attacked by Trevor Beckett." Trevor scrambled to his feet and ran for the exit. By the time the police arrived, he was long gone, but the security cameras had captured everything. The attack charge was filed Monday morning. Trevor's bail was set high enough that he couldn't afford it. And that's when Mara made her final desperate play. She called me Tuesday evening, sobbing into the phone. "Eli, please, you have to drop the charges against Trevor. He's in jail and he's not handling it well." "That's not my problem, Mara. Please, I'll do anything. I'll publicly apologize. I'll admit everything was my fault. I'll disappear forever. Just please don't let them destroy him completely." He destroyed himself when he decided to attack me in a parking garage. He was desperate. We both were. The lawsuits, the media attention, losing everything, it broke something in him. And whose fault is that? Silence. Mara, you and Trevor made a series of choices. You chose to have an affair. You chose to lie about it. You chose to try to rebuild your careers by defaming me and Mr. Chamberlain. Trevor chose to attack me in a parking garage. Every single consequence you're facing is the direct result of your own actions. I know that. I know we screwed up. But please, have mercy. I thought about it. Did I want mercy for them? Did I want this to end? No, I said finally. You didn't show mercy when you were lying about me to hundreds of people. You didn't show mercy when you were trying to destroy my reputation and career. You don't get to ask for mercy now that you're facing the consequences. I hung up and blocked her number for the final time. 3 months later, Trevor pled guilty to attack and was sentenced to 6 months in jail and 2 years probation. The defamation lawsuit resulted in a judgment of $2.3 million against both him and Mara. Mara declared bankruptcy and moved back in with her parents, who had reluctantly agreed to let her stay in their guest house while she figured out her life. I kept my job at Chamberlain Industries, got a significant promotion, and bought a house in a better neighborhood. And every morning when I wake up, I remember the text that started it all. I'm in the hospital, mental health crisis. This is all your fault. She was right about one thing. It was all my fault. My fault for being too trusting. My fault for not seeing through her lies sooner. My fault for not protecting myself better. But I learned from my mistakes, and I made sure they learned from theirs. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's making sure the truth comes to light and letting natural consequences take their course. Trevor and Mara wanted to rewrite history and paint themselves as sufferers. Instead, they became a cautionary tale about what happens when you lie to the wrong person.